All right, we are back, and I am talking about the inactive Impact Wrestling TNA Championships because, number one, I'm a huge sucker for titles. Like, we have a championship, and the art's great, but also it's just like the main focal point. And when there is an inactive champion, and I might make this a series with pay-per-views now because I haven't done that.
Right.
And I just think it might be kind of fun to go through it. So let's do some honorable mentions before we get into it. Let's talk about the NWA Championships. Now, this was at the time when it was an NWA property. It was NWA TNA, and they had rights to use 2 championships within the confines of TNA, which were the NWA World Heavyweight Champion and the NWA Tag Team Champions. The X Division Champion was not an NWA title. That was exclusive to TNA.
Right.
So, a little nod in the thing, we've had some of the greatest matches. We had the true Reign of Terror with Jeff Jarrett. He had the NWA World Champion.
That's another heckling.
Yeah, that's another. Yeah, look at that. I don't think you even thought about that, didn't you?
Well, I had a lot of thoughts. There's so much we can do.
With unpacking it with Jeff Jarrett. In that, yeah. That was just a vanity. But, NWA titles overall, we had Ron Truth Killings, the first African-American NWA, and still to this day, the only African-American NWA World Heavyweight Champion. We had the Sting match against Jeff Jarrett for the title. That was the show that got me into TNA, was that Bound for Glory when it was title versus career. So that's all cool. And then let's talk about we gotta talk about the GFW champions. Now I could have just done the wrestling lesson on that, but because of the sticky situation that happened there, it might have to be saved for another time. I want to do direct and TNA Impact Wrestling titles. So,
but all the Global Force titles technically were in Impact Wrestling.
They were in Impact Wrestling, but it was very brief because Jeff Jarrett still owned the right to the GFW properties when that whole shebang happened. Once again, we can talk about that in another heckling.
Yeah.
And maybe even do a tie-in with Global Force Wrestling title, whatever. So there you go. Now, let's talk about our first champion because this one is weird. Let's talk about the Legends champion, the television champion, the global champion, the King of the Mountain champion. So this title...
The title with 5 names.
Yes. Once again, now, I want to say one thing. This was probably one of my favorite designs of a TNA title ever. Because, number one, the side plates were, enormous. But this is a cool belt. So, the title was introduced on the October 23rd, 2008 edition of Impact. And it was christened the Legends Champion by Booker T. Now, the title was non-sanctioned until the authority figure, I think it was Jim Cornette still at that time. Also, number one, this was in the Hard Rock Casino in Las Vegas. We did not live here at the time, but I remember the episode when Booker T showcased the title. It was put into circulation as an official TNA champion when AJ Styles beat him at Destination X on March 15th, 2009. So between October and March, this was a non-sanctioned championship. This match made the title a sanctioned title as a secondary. Now, there were a couple of title changes within, but when Eric Young, who was the leader of World Elite at the time, won this champion, he renamed it the TNA Global Champion. Also, he declared that he wouldn't defend this champion on American soil or against American wrestlers. So he actually did international tours and defended it in Japan. He defended it in Mexico. He defended it in Canada. So he did defend it everywhere but America. I think there was a time when he actually had to. And so when AJ Styles won the championship again, he rechristened it as the TNA Television Champion. And so on July 3rd, 2014, Kurt Angle declared this champion inactive from that point. So a good amount of time.
Because he merged it with the world title, didn't he?
No, that was later.
Oh.
Yeah, no, he just declared inactive because it wasn't going over. So The title was reactivated on June 25th, 2015, so just shy of a year of this champion not existing. And now it was called the King of the Mountain Championship. And so Jeff Jarrett won that one.
Yeah, no shit.
Yep. At Slammiversary, that was the one where the TNA heavyweight champion was on the line for some reason. It was deactivated again to bring back the global champion, or the grand champion, which we'll talk about here in a moment.
Because this is technically a different title.
Yep. So, and you're right. There was a time when Bobby Lashley was going through a tear, and the title was finally deactivated forever when Lashley beat James Storm in a winner-take-all where the TNA World Heavyweight, the Legends, or the Television Champion, and the X Division Champion were all on the line. There were, let's see here. I probably should have separated this out a little bit better than I did, but whatever. Eric Young holds the record for the most amount of championships, and also he is the only wrestler to hold this title in all 4 of its title reincarnations, because the Legends, or the King of the Mountain Champion, was defended. It wasn't just given to Jeff Jarrett and then it was deactivated. It was actually defended frequently. PJ Black won it when it was the King of the Mountain Champion. Eric Young won it when it was the King of the Mountain Champion, and he holds the most for it as well. Abyss has the longest reign with this championship in some way, shape, or form, with a 398-day reign, because at some point in time they got bored with it. Bobby Lashley was the final champion when he beat James Storm, and with all the titles on the line, unifying it and thus retiring it there. Overall, there were 25 reigns with the champion between 19 wrestlers, 3 vacancies, and 2 deactivations. I missed this title. Now, let's talk about our next one. I already said it. Let's talk about the Grand Champion. This one is weird. This one was brought in by Billy Corgan.
Yeah, Billy.
And that was when the King of the Mountain Champion was retired in favor of this champion. Corgan also announced that this was a rule-specific championship harkening back to a more European version of professional wrestling back in the day. Now, the original rules were this. There were 3 minutes. Now, this was a 3-round base system, and there were 3 minutes per round. And each event matches had 5 minutes per round. No, okay, let's try that whole sentence again.
Jesus.
There were 3 rounds, 5 minutes each. There, sentence. It was a 10-point must system. If you're confused, other than me being an idiot, you're correct, because this was stupid. Well, it was.
I know.
There were judges, and the judges' categories were physicality, aggressiveness, same thing, and controlling the action. All of that literally is the same thing with extra steps.
Right.
Wins can happen at any time via pinfall or submission. And if there is no winner after the 3 rounds, a winner is declared by the judges. And I think that's only happened like 3 times.
Right.
On July 25th, 2018, at the Genesis event, Matt Sydal defeated champion EC3, or Ethan Carter III at that time, in a no rounds, no judges match. Subsequent title defenses were also under that contest, with the rules being thrown out.
So a regular title.
Yes, it became a regular championship by that point. Because when they did the no judges, no rules, or no rounds, no judges match, that was like the specialty thing for this particular champion.
Right.
Now, on June 4th, 2018, at the Slammiversary pay-per-views press conference, Austin Aries announced that the Grand and Impact World Champions were merged/unified. So it wasn't even merged in a match. Austin Aries, who was the belt collector at the time, won both titles. On April 24th, 2022, they had Aaron Stevens won the inaugural champion from 2022. I don't know why that's 2022. That's not right.
No, it's not.
It's 2016. It was 2016 Bound for Glory is when Aaron Stevens, same person, won the title from Eddie Edwards. Moose has the longest reign and the most reigns with 2. And his second reign was the longest with 174 days. And Josh Matthews won this title for a day.
Well,
now,
he was given the title.
He was given the title by Matt Sydal, but he was still technically a grand champion.
He was.
Let's talk about, now this one is weird. This is a separate lineage.
That's right. This is the 2020 version of the TNA World Heavyweight Championship.
Yes. That is a
the one
thing
that Moose had.
Yes. So at this time, Moose was declaring himself Mr. TNA and represented the company's history while battling the Stars. So he actually did bring back this championship without the white strap. So when it became the white strap, it became sanctioned. Now, the situation was this. Moose had this champion before the pandemic hit. And when the pandemic hit, Tessa Blanchard was the Impact World Champion, and she was stuck in Mexico because that's where she was living with her husband, what's his name? Daga, thank you. So, because she was being a bitch, I'm sorry, she was, and refused to give this championship back, Impact Wrestling had to have a main champion within their roster because then these people are fighting over nothing. And since Moose had the TNA World Heavyweight Champion going, Scott D'Amore, in kayfabe and in reality, decided to make this a sanctioned champion until they could get the Impact World Championship back from Tessa because she was holding the title over Impact Wrestling's head for buying out her contract. Right. So essentially more money. Now, they eventually did do that. And at some point in time, they had the unification match between Rich Swann, who was the Impact World Champion, and Moose, who was the TNA World Heavyweight Champion.
Won by Swann.
Right, and Rich Swann won the match. Now, there were only 2 champions, Moose and Rich Swann, because as soon as Swann won the title, the title was deactivated. Very short. I'm going to do this not as like a serious champion, but as a nod to the past. And this was a non-sanctioned champion, but it was defended in some way, shape, or form. I'm talking about the beer drinking champion,
which was a plastic WWE championship.
A plastic
spinner. It was the toy spinner that you probably had when you were a kid.
I did, yeah. We had the toy spinner,
and he just taped a beer bottle to it.
These were the funniest segments at the time. So, the championship was introduced by, obviously, James Storm at the Genesis pay-per-view on November 11th, 2007. It was active until February 26, 2008, and it was destroyed by Rhino. Now, James Storm and Eric Young were in a rivalry that involved around drinking copious amounts of alcohol. Drink responsibly, kids. So, this title was defended a handful of times. There were 3 reigns between 2 different wrestlers, and all of it involved drinking. Now, Rhino was the one who destroyed the champion, and James Storm was the first and last champion because Rhino did not hold this title. I guess Rhino had drinking issues in the way past, and they brought that up with his rivalry with James Storm, which led up to this title being destroyed. I have fond memories of this because Eric Young is awesome and James Storm is awesome.
Right.
There. So, just some nods to TNA, Impact Wrestling, and the championships. I will make this a series on different champions for different companies.
Cool.
I'm also going to be doing this on CMLL and on Triple A, so hopefully you'll get some popcorn and pack a lunch.
So, man, that has to be a whole fucking episode to itself. But we also have talked about the original, because this one was not, it was deactivated, but then they brought it back, which was the Knockouts Tag Team Champions.
I did not bring that up because it's technically an active champion. So
but for a while, it was inactive.
Yes, it was. They didn't have the star power to hold the knockout or the Knockouts Tag Team Champions, and they deactivated the titles because ODB and Eric Young had those belts.
Right.
That was a whole mess and a half. But yeah, I just didn't talk about it because it's now an active champion. It's all the same lineage, so technically...
Oh, it is? Okay.
It's all the same lineage.
Right, because I know the WWE Women's Tag Team Championships don't share a lineage.
They do not. The Knockouts champions do. I even went on the Wikipedia article. It's not on there.
Right.
Same lineage. So, when we come back, we're not only going to make Impact Wrestling and Rebellion Majestic again, but we're going to make Pro Wrestling Majestic again.